Ronald Reagan signed a 1967 law as California governor that liberalized abortion in that state, a decision he later came to regret. But as president, he was one of the first to openly embrace the pro-life cause. He even wrote a book about the subject. The landmark Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision legalizing abortion nationwide was overturned 2 years ago. And Vice President Harris is the first candidate to vociferously run on abortion rights. What will be the future of the pro-life cause and crisis pregnancy centers under a new administration, whether it be Democrat or Republican? Here with some answers, attorney, former crisis pregnancy center director, and now executive director of Cleveland Right to Life, Kate Makra. Kate, thanks for being here. I wanted to get your take as a former crisis pregnancy director. You know, we hear from a lot of alleged pro-life leaders. To my mind, pro-life leaders are the people who are on the front lines protecting babies and their mothers. Reflect on how the Biden administration has treated these crisis pregnancy centers over the last 4 years. What kind of regulations are you facing under the Biden-Harris administration, or have you faced?
Well, I think we need to direct our anger and our fire where it belongs. And as you pointed out, at the Biden-Harris administration, because they have made no bones about the fact that they are going after pro-lifers, whether it be pro-life protesters or activists. And for whatever reason, they have decided that pro-life pregnancy centers, whether you want to call them pro-life resource centers, crisis pregnancy centers, they provide valuable resources, not only to women and children, but the Biden-Harris administration, they're making it their mission to shut these places down. They are so afraid that some of these women who come in may actually choose life for their children. And they are so threatened by that. You know, long gone are the days of abortion being safe, legal, and rare.
Yeah, Kate, explain the FACE Act. This is something that, you know, a lot of people don't pay any attention to. How has it been employed against peaceful pro-life protesters, the FACE Act?
The FACE Act stands for Federal Access to Clinic Entrances, and it was passed and signed by President Clinton in 1994. And it was meant to protect women and people who go to not only abortion clinics, but pregnancy resource centers. But since 1994, there was a study that was done, and it showed that 97% of the prosecutions have been against pro-lifers. So you've probably heard, and I know that EWTN has been great about publicizing people like Mark Houck and Paul Vaughn, people who have been arrested in the dead of night with guns pointed at their family for protesting outside of abortion clinics. And they are just a few. I mean, there have been hundreds of peaceful protesters. There's one 89-year-old woman who is the survivor of a Soviet concentration camp. And she is a pro-life activist, and she just recently was convicted of violating this FACE Act. And so not only is it a federal violation, but then the federal prosecutors decide to slap these conspiracy charges on top of the regular violation. So that adds more years on top of that. And they are persecuting pro-lifers with glee.
Kate, briefly tell me how this treatment compares with that given to groups, violent groups like Jane's Revenge, who throw Molotov cocktails at pro-life centers and crisis pregnancy centers. How are they treated?
Well, it's funny you should mention that. I was just doing some research before our interview, and the only case that I could find, there were a couple of members of this radical group, Jane's Revenge, who did plead guilty, and it was quietly announced in a press release back in June that they had pled guilty to damaging a pregnancy resource center. They had defaced a pregnancy center, you know, with some nasty graffiti and things like that. And it just said in the press release, oh, they're going to be sentenced later. So I'm sure it's going to be put off, and then it'll be quietly done at another time. But as I said, 97% of the prosecutions of the FACE Act are against pro-lifers. So I could not find anything where the prosecutors threw the book at any of these people. And there have been some violent acts, not only against pregnancy centers, but Catholic churches and other churches because
Yeah.
the FACE Act does protect churches as well.
Kate, at the DNC last week, the Democrats promoted free abortions and vasectomies via a nearby branch of Planned Parenthood who literally rolled a van near the convention hall. Democrat nominee Kamala Harris had this to say about abortion during her convention speech. Watch.
Get this, he plans to create a national anti-abortion coordinator and force states to report on women's miscarriages and abortions. Simply put, they are out of their minds. And when Congress passes a bill to restore reproductive freedom, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law.
Kate, your thoughts on what a Harris-Walz administration would mean for crisis pregnancy centers as well as the pro-life movement, if you will?
Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are an existential threat to the pro-lifers and to crisis pregnancy centers. What she has said and what the whole Democratic Party is spouting, nothing but lies. And it just boggles my mind how the media just carries their water and they let them get away with it. Donald Trump, for whatever you want to say about some of the positions that he's taken, he believes in freedom. That's absolutely correct. He has never advocated for getting rid of contraceptives, or he has flat out said he would not sign a national abortion ban. So the fact that they can get out there and so comfortably lie with impunity. She was the first sitting vice president ever to visit an abortion clinic and to celebrate it. And she celebrated the abortion clinic as a place of where women could get their dignity back, and spouted off all these horrible platitudes. And Tim Walz is actually even worse. In his state, late-term abortion is the norm. And there have been at least 6 babies that have been born alive as a result of botched abortions. And they have been left to die because their law does not provide for any life-saving care for these babies.
Kate, the GOP disappointed many in the pro-life community earlier this year when the pro-life plank was removed from the GOP platform. But it was the Trump administration that made the long-awaited repeal of Roe v. Wade possible back in 2022. The movement had been fighting for Roe to be struck down since its inception. Now abortion has been sent back to the states. Here is what GOP Vice Presidential candidate J.D. Vance had to say recently.
What President Trump has said has been very direct, and I think honestly he's tried to find some common ground in this country that has been divided by this question for 50 years. He said, look, Pennsylvania is going to want to have a different abortion policy from Ohio, which is going to want to have a different policy from California. Let the states decide. Let the people in those states decide. We want to make American family life affordable again, and I think that's the best way to promote a culture of life in this country.
Kate, the Trump position on abortion has come under fire by some in the pro-life community, particularly folks like Lila Rose of Live Action, who want a federal ban on abortion and see anything less than that as an abandonment of the cause. She's gone so far as to say Donald Trump is throwing babies under the bus. Your reaction to that notion?
Of course, I'm the director of a no exceptions pro-life organization. Cleveland Right to Life has always been proud of the fact that we do not openly endorse candidates that support exceptions for abortion, and that's just the truth. But by the same token, we are realistic in that we have to understand that there are candidates that don't always toe the line as far as what we believe. And we have to be realistic, as I said. And, I understand where some of these pro-life leaders are coming from. However, I don't think some of the rhetoric is helpful. If you look at Kamala Harris and you line her up versus Donald Trump, there is absolutely no comparison. On the one hand, you have a woman who celebrates abortion, and you see what they're doing to their political enemies, and it's only going to be basically that on steroids if they get elected. And Donald Trump, for all of his flaws, believes in freedom, and he has pledged to listen to folks to get rid of there's a movement to repeal the FACE Act and Cleveland Right to Life is 100% behind that. And there's a movement in Congress to do that. And I believe that President Trump will get behind that.
Yeah, it's puzzling to me that after 50 years of trying to get abortion policy out of the hands of the federal government, you now have pro-life leaders that want to put it back in the hands of the Fed. This is mind-boggling to me. I mean, you have more control on the local level, on the state level. That's subsidiarity. That's certainly where the Catholic Church is and should be. But I think people are living in fantasy land. If the church and this movement have not convinced enough voters to create a majority, you can't expect a politician to come out and be more Catholic than the Pope. I mean, look, if there was a majority of pro-life voters out there and the church and the pro-life movement had done its job all these years, Kamala Harris would not be advocating abortion on demand. I promise you. She'd be running in the Bill Clinton direction, but she's not there. We will leave it there. Kate Makra from Cleveland Right to Life, thank you for being here, and you can learn more about the work of Cleveland Right to Life at clevelandrighttolife.org. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Raymond. God bless you.